2016 against health care for the poor or food stamps or something like that. So they're always being, as being perceived in a certain way. But attitudes are important, and that's what the Campaign for Liberty is all about, is changing attitudes. And one place where we've already had a victory, and it wasn't my victory because I knew how to twist arms, because I don't know how to twist arms. I don't have anything to trade. But I like to persuade people, and because of your effort around the country in this effort to get the attention of the American people on the issue of auditing the Fed, you've had a tremendous success. Today we had another Democrat sign on. We have all the Republicans. We have, I think, 109 or 111, Democrats on. So it is bipartisan. The people are getting their attention. It is a prevailing attitude now. 75% of the American people, I didn't even know they would know what the Federal Reserve was. A few years ago they didn't, but they're getting to know about it now. And 75% of the American people support us on this issue of auditing the Fed. Now, the big question is where are we going from here? Well, I hope to victory, but we have a ways to go. Because although there's a lot of resistance that we've heard from them in the newspapers, I don't think it's really started yet. I think they are really, really going to come down hard and use the fear tactic of saying, oh, the world will come to end if you find out what we're doing. No. What will happen is if we find out what they're doing, it'll be the end of the Fed, is what's going to happen. Their biggest claim is if we open up the books and we audit the Fed, that we will make the Federal Reserve political. And we'll be involved in monetary policy. Auditing the Fed bill that I have has nothing to do with monitoring policy. We want to know what they're doing. We want to know who their buddies are. We want to know what kind of deals they're making. We want to know why Lehman fails and why Goldman Sachs is successful. We want to get to the bottom of all this. And yet they're claiming that transparency would be very bad. It would be political. But has anybody heard any stories about over the years how political it is? If Goldman Sachs has influence in our Treasury and our Federal Reserve, and it's secret, isn't that political? It's just corrupt politicians that are controlling what we have. So if we represent the people and we want to know what's going on and we finally wake up and we want to do some oversight, what is so bad about the people knowing what's going on in the Federal Reserve? Well, we know why they don't want to hear about this, because can you imagine how much power, there's a few members of the Federal Reserve, and especially the chairman of the Federal Reserve, they have the power to create money out of thin air, and it's the reserve currency of the world. Now, Bernanke is a participant, and others have done it too. I mean, there was that Ayn Rand buddy, gold standard Alan Greenspan, that inflated like nobody else did. But they really, believe in what they're doing as well as serving the interests of others. But this is a lot of power to be able to be the chief counterfeiter of the world. I think it's interesting. In 1792, we had our first coinage act falling in the Constitution to clarify the definition of a dollar. And everybody knew what a dollar was, but they put it in concrete. It was the Spanish mill dollar, and it was 371 grains of silver. But they put that into the bill. And, of course, the monetary issue in the Constitution is along with weights and measures. They never assumed that we would violate it and print bills of credit or print paper money. But in the Coinage Act of 1792, they had a penalty if you became a counterfeiter. The penalty was death. I don't think I'm going to introduce a bill along those lines right now. But that's how strongly the founders felt about it, because they had the consequence of runaway inflation, and they didn't even want to have paper certificates guaranteed for silver or gold. They want to just have coinage because that's what it says: coin gold and silver. But the effort is obvious that it's necessary. But the Fed is so important because it allows governments to grow. I think it's one of the most significant problems I have with the Fed, and you'll read that in the Fed book. But there's a lot of reasons to be opposed to the Fed. I think for the moral reasons, the economic reasons, and also the reason that I think is the biggest reason is that it is so secret, but it allows the growth of government. It teaches the congressmen not to be responsible at all. They do not have to, tax us directly. And if we could just say you can't borrow either, I would favor the government never being able to borrow. But what happens is they run up the debt. And if the interest rates go high, the Federal Reserve buys them. Well, how do they buy the debt? They just print the money or have a computer entries. Some weeks it's 60, 70, 80 billion dollars in a week of new money that they create. So this is very, very powerful and has to be curtailed. But when we finally solve this, though, the important thing, the question we have to answer is, what should the role of government be? And it should be very limited, and we have the guidance. A lot of people will claim that we who believe in this philosophy, we want to go back to the dark ages of the 19th century and all. But freedom is a very new and modern idea if you look at it throughout 7,000 years of history. I mean, the Industrial Revolution and freedom has just come about recently in those terms, hundreds of years. That's all it is. In our Constitution, just a few years over 200 years, and it was the grand experiment. It was great. It was imperfect. It had its bad flaws. But immediately after it was passed, we started making it weaker and weaker. And of course, the 20th century has been a disaster for the Constitution. But nevertheless, freedom reigned, and we had great prosperity. And even though we had our ups and downs, we had rather stable prices until 1971. And since then, it's been essentially runaway inflation of the money supply and the financial bubbles. And this is something that could be ended and should be ended. And the sooner it is ended, the better. But we don't know exactly what will happen and when it will happen. But believe me, you have to keep up your work and effort, because that will make all the difference in the world. But understanding what liberty is all about is very important. I believe that for us to be successful, we have to have the love of liberty deep in our hearts. I believe also that we have to have the facts and the understanding of liberty well embedded into our minds as well. So it's the love of liberty and the knowledge of how it works that will sell it. Because if we try to sell this like, we believe in laissez-faire capitalism, and we believe in taking care of ourselves and everybody else take care of themselves, that's in many ways can work pretty well. Because even if you are not a generous person and you're not a compassionate person, you don't work much with your family and friends and neighbors and communities like we should, it still doesn't do a whole lot of harm. But if we have great prosperity and then we're also a compassionate people, it's going to work very, very well. But even if we're void of enough voluntary compassion, believe me, freedom is compassionate. Because if you do care about your fellow man, you have to believe in freedom and honest money and all the things that are good and wonderful in a free society. But if we did that, the maximum number of people would be taken care of. I believe that, I don't believe this idea that the government should be the distributor of health care. It's a tough sell because people have been conditioned. And I'm not even for saying, well, all right, we're going to have our perfect society tomorrow. We're going to cut off the people dependent on health care from the government. I'm much more in favor of cutting this overseas stuff and guiding people back to the point where they can and should take care of themselves. Instead of medical care, the government expanding their